The notification came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I remember because I just finished reviewing my quarterly numbers, and the screen was still glowing with that particular shade of green that meant everything was exactly where it needed to be. My phone buzzed on the desk beside me, and I glanced down, expecting a client email or maybe a shipping update. Instead, it was a text from my mother. Family dinner, Sunday, 2 p.m. Don't make excuses this time. I set the phone face down and stared at the wall for a long moment. Don't make excuses this time. As if every reason I'd ever given for not being able to make it, the work trip, the quarterly close, the one time my flight from Denver got canceled, had been performance. As if I'd been avoiding them on purpose. Well, maybe I had been. A little. I picked the phone back up and typed back. I'll be there. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and told myself it would be fine. It was not going to be fine. I should give you some background because none of this makes sense without it. My brother's name is Evan. He's 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, he has been the one my parents pointed to when they wanted to explain what success looked like. Evan got the better grades, or at least the ones they bragged about more. Evan played lacrosse in high school, and my dad still has the team photo on the wall in the hallway. Evan went to the University of Michigan, which in our family was spoken about the way other families talk about Harvard. And after Michigan, Evan went into real estate development, which, in the early years, actually looked impressive. He had a business partner, a LLC, glossy renderings of mixed-use developments. He came to Thanksgiving with a different car every 2 years and wore clothes that had that particular quiet, expensive look that says someone spent real money trying not to look like they spent real money. I went to a state school in Ohio. I studied accounting, which my mother described to relatives as something with numbers. I did not play a sport or join a sorority. After graduation, I got a job doing bookkeeping for a mid-sized manufacturing company in Columbus, moved into a one-bedroom apartment, and started building something on the side that I didn't tell anyone about for a very long time. The thing I was building was a virtual bookkeeping and tax prep service for small businesses. I know that sounds unglamorous. It was for a while. I started with 3 clients I found through a freelancing platform, worked nights and weekends, reinvested every dollar I made back into the business. By year 2, I had a small team of contractors. By year 3, I had a software subscription model and a waiting list. By the time I was 29, I had 31 recurring clients, 2 full-time employees, and annual revenue that would have made Evan's eyes water. I didn't tell my family any of this, partly because they had never asked, partly because every time I tried to explain what I did, even in the early days when I was just freelancing, my mother's eyes would glaze over slightly, and my father would say something like, "That sounds like a lot of screen time," and Evan would smirk in that specific way he had. The one that meant we both know this isn't real work. So I stopped explaining. I kept my life in Columbus, flew home for the holidays, answered it's going fine when anyone asked about work, and let them all keep believing whatever they believed about me. That was probably my mistake, in retrospect. When you let people fill in a blank long enough, they start treating their assumptions like facts. The Sunday dinner was at my parents' house in Ann Arbor. I drove up Saturday night, stayed at a hotel. I always stay at a hotel when I go home, which is its own conversation, and arrived at the house at 1:55 in the afternoon carrying a bottle of wine and a pie from a bakery I'd passed on the way. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing the expression she wore when she was managing something. "You're almost late," she said, which meant I was exactly on time. "Hi, Mom." I handed her the pie. She looked at it briefly. "Evan and Krista are already here." Krista is Evan's wife. She is the kind of person who asks questions that are not really questions. "Oh, you're still doing the apartment thing?" is a question Krista has asked me. "I always think it's so brave not to care about things like equity," is a thing Krista has said while nodding thoughtfully. I followed my mother into the house. My dad was in the living room watching a pre-game show. He got up and hugged me the way he always does, a little stiff, a little distant, the hug of a man who learned physical affection from a generation that didn't really teach it. "I don't hold it against him," he said. "Good drive?" "Not bad," I said. Evan was in the kitchen. He was leaning against the counter with a glass of something amber, and he looked at me when I walked in the way you look at something you were expecting and aren't particularly excited about. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Krista was arranging something on a platter. She looked up and smiled with all her teeth. "We were just saying how nice it is that we could all finally get together. Feels like forever." It had been 8 months, which in my family's language meant I was the one who'd been absent. We made small talk through the appetizers. Football, weather, something about a neighbor's renovation. My mother brought food to the table and we all sat down, and for the first 20 minutes it was almost normal. Almost fine. Then my father set down his fork. He didn't say anything right away. He just set it down very deliberately, the way people do when they've been rehearsing what comes next, and he looked at me. "We wanted to talk to you about something," he said. I felt it then. That particular stillness in the room that comes when everyone already knows what's about to happen except you. "Okay," I said. "We've been worried," my mother said, "about your situation." "My situation." "Your financial situation," Evan said. "Your business, or whatever it is you're calling it." I looked at him. He was looking back at me with an expression that was trying very hard to look like concern and not quite getting there. "What about it?" I said. "We just don't think it's sustainable," my mother said. "Freelancing or, whatever it is, you're almost 30. You don't have any retirement savings, you don't have equity in anything, you're renting. You don't actually know any of that," I said. Very calmly. "We're your family," my father said. "We worry. I appreciate that, but you don't have any information about my finances, so I'm curious what you're basing this on." Evan made a small sound. "Come on, Jade. We all know you're not exactly killing it. You've been doing this bookkeeping thing for 5 years? And you're still in the same apartment, still driving the same car. I like my car." "That's not the point." He put his hands flat on the table. "The point is that Krista and I have been talking, and we think it might make sense for you to come on board with us." "With the business?" "Evan Hollis Development." I waited. "You're good with numbers," he continued. "We need someone to handle the books, manage the accounts, deal with the financial reporting. We could pay you a salary. Benefits. You'd have stability." There it was. "You want me to do your bookkeeping," I said. "We want to bring you into the business," Krista said, with an emphasis on business that was meant to make me feel like I was being offered something generous. "And in exchange," I said slowly, "I would need to..." "What? Leave Columbus? Leave my clients?" "Your few clients?" Evan said. "Yes. You could move back here. Mom and Dad have the space. You could stay here while you get back on your feet." "Get back on my feet. You know what I mean." "I genuinely don't," I said. "Because I haven't fallen." My mother reached across the table and touched my hand. "Sweetheart, there's no shame in it. Building something from nothing is incredibly hard. Not everyone can do it. Evan has real infrastructure, real investors, real Jade." My father's voice was quieter now, and somehow that was worse. "We're not trying to embarrass you. We love you. But we've been talking about this for a while, and we think you need someone looking out for you financially. We think you need some oversight." I felt something go very still inside me. "Oversight," I said. "Just someone to help manage things. Make sure you're okay. Are you asking me if you can have access to my financial accounts?" No one said anything. "Because that's what oversight means," I said. "That's what you're asking." "We're asking you to let us help," Evan said. "Which, honestly, Jade, you should be grateful for. Not everyone has family willing to step in when things are going sideways." "What of going sideways specifically? Can someone tell me what concrete information you have that suggests my business is failing?" Silence. "You drive a 3-year-old Civic," Krista said. I stared at her. "I drive a 3-year-old Civic," I repeated, "because I bought it outright and I don't have a car payment." "That's..." She trailed off. "What? That's a choice that doesn't make sense when you're trying to project success to clients." I set my napkin on the table. Very slowly. "I'm going to need a minute," I said. I got up and walked to the bathroom down the hall and stood in front of the mirror and breathed. Here's what I knew. Standing in that bathroom, I had $2.3 million in a business account that I had not touched because I was trying to decide whether to reinvest or take a distribution. I had $400,000 in retirement accounts. I had no debt. My business had cleared $800,000 in revenue the previous year, with a margin that would have made my brother's real estate portfolio look anemic. And my family was trying to give me oversight because I drove a practical car. I also knew something else. Something that I had noticed 6 months earlier and then pushed to the back of my mind because I didn't want to believe it. I went back to the dining room. Before we continue, I said, sitting down, I want to ask Evan something. He looked at me with that careful expression. How's the Whitmore project going? Something moved across his face so fast I almost missed it. Fine, he said. It's in progress. Which phase? We're. He glanced at Krista. He glanced at Krista. We're in permitting. Still? I said. Because I thought you broke ground 14 months ago. Permitting takes time. You'd know that if you worked in actual development. I do know that, I said. I also know that the Whitmore parcel had a mechanics lien filed against it in September, and another one in November. My father turned to look at Evan. I don't know what you're talking about, Evan said. I think you do, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Because here's the thing about being an accountant, you can't stop looking at numbers. And about 6 months ago, when Evan had mentioned the Whitmore project at Christmas, something had nagged at me enough that I pulled the public records, just to look. Just out of habit. What I found had kept me up for 3 nights. I'm not trying to embarrass you, I said, but since we're talking about financial oversight and who in this family needs help, I think everyone should know what I found. I opened the folder. Evan Hollis Development has 4 active mechanics liens across 2 properties. Your primary LLC has a $340,000 line of credit that you've drawn to the limit. Your business partner, I won't say his name, but everyone at this table knows who I mean, filed for personal bankruptcy in February, which means your joint venture agreements are potentially in default. And your Riverside project, which you told Mom and Dad you were the lead developer on, was actually transferred out of your name 11 months ago. The dining room was absolutely silent. My mother was looking at Evan. My father was very still. Evan's jaw was tight. Those are public records that anyone can misinterpret. They're not misinterpreted, I said. I'm an accountant. This is literally what I do. You had no right to go looking into my business, Evan. My father's voice was very quiet. Is this true? Evan didn't answer right away. He picked up his glass and put it down and then looked at the table. It's complicated, he said. How much do you owe? My father asked. Silence. How much, Evan? It's not, he exhaled. It's being managed. That's not, he exhaled. It's being managed. That's not a number, I said. Stay out of it, Jade. You brought me into this room to talk about my finances, I said. I'm staying in it. My father looked at me. He had the expression of someone doing an internal accounting of his own, adding things up that he should have added up a long time ago. What are the numbers, Jade? Everything. What are we looking at? I showed him the folder. He read it for a long time. Krista had gone very quiet on the other side of the table. My mother kept looking back and forth between the folder and Evan's face. This is, my father started. I know, I said. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Because I wasn't sure it was my place, and because I kept hoping I was wrong. He nodded. He looked old suddenly. Older than I usually let myself notice. And your business, he said, your bookkeeping business, is fine, I said. More than fine. The car is a choice, a conscious one. I paused. I'm not struggling, Dad. I have never been struggling. I just don't talk about money the way Evan does. My mother made a sound that I couldn't quite interpret. Somewhere between grief and relief, and something she hadn't finished processing yet. Evan pushed back from the table. This is ridiculous. She comes in here with a folder like she's performing some kind of Evan. My father stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Sit down. I want to tell you that the rest of that afternoon was clean. A clear resolution, the moment where everything snapped into place and we all understood each other. It wasn't like that. My mother cried, which made everything harder. Evan left before dessert with Krista trailing behind him, and we could all hear them having a low, fierce conversation in the driveway before their car pulled out. My father sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that, not saying much, turning pages in the folder I'd left with him. I helped my mother clear the dishes. We didn't talk about anything important for a while. Then she said, without looking at me, I should have asked more questions. About your work. About how you were doing. It's okay, I said. It's not. She set down the plate she was holding. All this time you've been doing well, and I assumed. You assumed what you saw, I said. I didn't show you anything different. She looked at me then. Why not? I thought about it honestly. Because every time I tried, it felt like it wasn't landing. Like you'd already decided what I was. I picked up a dish towel, and after a while it's easier to just let people believe what they want. She didn't have an answer for that, and I didn't need her to. My father called a family attorney the following week, not for me. For the liens, the LLC situation. The question of whether any of the money Evan had borrowed from my parents over the past 3 years, in increments for investment opportunities, could be recovered. There was more money involved than I'd known. There is always more money involved than anyone knows. Evan called me 2 weeks later, not to apologize exactly, more to ask if I would consult on the restructuring. I told him I'd think about it. I'm still thinking about it. What I keep coming back to isn't the dinner, or the folder, or even the way my mother looked when she realized how little she'd been paying attention. What I keep coming back to is the moment in the bathroom when I was standing in front of the mirror breathing. There was a version of me standing in that bathroom who would have gone back out and said, "Fine, you're right. Maybe I do need help." Who would have been so worn down by years of being the unremarkable one, the one without the lacrosse photo, the one with the boring career with numbers, that she would have handed over whatever she was asked to hand over, just to make the room feel easier. I'm glad I'm not her anymore. I think she left somewhere around year 3 when I signed my 15th client and realized no one in that dining room knew it had happened. My name is Jade. I'm 31. I own a virtual accounting firm that I built from a laptop in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. I drive a 3-year-old Civic. I like it. Here's what I want you to take from this, because I'd been turning it over since that Sunday and I think it matters. The people in your life who have never asked about your work will be the first to form opinions about it. The ones who never showed up to ask what you were building will be the quickest to tell you it needs to be fixed. And when someone calls a family meeting, when someone summons you with that particular tone of authority that implies you owe them your presence and your obedience, and possibly your financial information, you are allowed to walk in there with a folder. You are allowed to have done your homework. You are allowed to know exactly what you're worth before anyone in that room gets to tell you. I want to be clear about one more thing, because I've seen the assumption in how people tell stories like mine. I did not go to that dinner to win. I didn't drive to Ann Arbor with a folder full of public records because I wanted to humiliate my brother, or prove my parents wrong, or stage some kind of revenge moment that I'd been rehearsing for years. I went because my mother said don't make excuses this time, and some part of me, the part that still wants to be in that family, despite everything, listened. The folder was just what happened when I finally stopped pretending the room wasn't already full of things no one had said out loud. I appreciate every single one of you who watched this all the way through. If any part of this resonated, if you've sat at a table where someone questioned your competence or felt the specific exhaustion of being underestimated by people who are supposed to know you, drop something in the comments. I read all of them. And if you're building something right now that nobody in your life quite believes in yet, keep going. The folder will be ready when you need it. I've thought a lot about what actually caused that Sunday to go the way it did. Not the folder, not the liens, not even the $2.3 million sitting quietly in an account nobody knew existed. What caused it was something much slower and much older than any of that. Evan had spent years making a certain kind of noise, the right car, the right vocabulary, the investor dinners, the casual mentions of projects with important-sounding names, and noise, when it goes unchallenged long enough, starts to sound like substance. My parents heard it, they believed it. That wasn't weakness on their part, not entirely. It's what happens when someone performs confidence convincingly enough for long enough. You stop checking whether there's anything underneath. I had done the opposite. I'd gone quiet. I built something real and told no one, partly out of habit and partly because I'd stopped believing anyone in that room would understand it even if I tried. And silence, when it goes on long enough, gets misread too. My silence looked like struggle. My practical car looked like limitation. My one-bedroom apartment looked like someone who hadn't figured it out yet. We were both sending signals. His were loud and mine were absent. And the room filled in the blanks the way rooms always do, with whatever story was already most convenient. That's the thing I keep turning over. Actions accumulate. The choices you make quietly, the ones no one sees, the night you stay up to finish a proposal instead of watching TV, the year you don't take a vacation because you're reinvesting, the client you spend an extra 2 hours on even though they'll never know. Those choices stack. They don't disappear just because no one's watching. They build something. And eventually, whether you want it to or not, that something becomes visible. Evan's choices accumulated too. Every corner he cut, every payment he delayed, every document he restructured, hoping no one would look too closely, those stacked as well. In the same direction, just the opposite way. I didn't expose my brother because I was trying to win something. I want to be honest about that. I went back to that table because I was tired of being the person in the room who knew the truth and kept it to herself to keep the peace. There's a version of integrity that looks like staying quiet and not making waves. I used to think that was the mature version. I don't anymore. Staying quiet while something false is treated as true isn't peace. It's just postponed damage. What I know now, in my 30s, that I didn't fully understand in my 20s, the clearest form of self-respect is refusing to let a false story about you go unchallenged indefinitely. Not aggressively, not for revenge, but simply because you owe it to yourself to be known accurately. Jade, the real one, not the one Evan described, deserved to exist in that room. She'd earned it. My dad called me 2 weeks after the dinner. He said, I should have asked better questions. About both of you. It wasn't a full apology, but it was honest, and at this point in my life, I think I value honesty more than I value apology. The folder is still on my desk. I don't know why I haven't filed it away yet. Maybe because it reminds me that preparation isn't paranoia, that paying attention isn't aggression, that knowing your own numbers, really knowing them, is the quietest and most unshakable form of confidence there is. Build the thing. Know what it's worth. And when someone calls the meeting, walk in ready.